We are now up to part 11 in our series following the book Heaven and Hell. And this part of the book, this section of the book, deals with children in heaven, reassuring us that every child who has ever been born, if they have died as a child, has been accepted and is with the Lord in heaven. We begin our readings here by looking at two stories or two messages out of the Gospel of Matthew. The first one here is from Matthew chapter 19. Then little children were brought to him that he might put his hands on them and pray. But the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." And he laid his hands on them and departed from there. Our second reading from Matthew comes from Matthew's final chapter, chapter 28. Then the 11 disciples went away into Galilee to the mountain which Jesus had appointed for them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." And reading now from Heaven and Hell, number 329. Some people believe that only children born in the church get into heaven, not children born outside the church. They say this is because children born in the church are baptized and are introduced into the faith of the church by this baptism. They do not realize that no one gets either heaven or faith by baptism. Baptism serves only as a sign and reminder that we need to be reborn. May it be known that every child who dies, no matter where he or she was born, within the church or outside it, of devout or irreverent parents, is accepted by the Lord after death, brought up in heaven, taught according to the divine design, and filled with affections for what is good, and through them with direct knowledge of the truth, and then being continually perfected in intelligence and wisdom. All such individuals are led into heaven and become angels. Amen. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Today we are reflecting on a very challenging, a very difficult topic, because we're thinking about children who have died. And so we have a whole section here in the book, Heaven and Hell, that deals directly with this subject. with the Lord not only providing us information, but hopefully also comfort. Comfort for ourselves if any of us have gone through this, and potentially the ability to offer some comfort to the people that we know and love who have gone through this or in the future will go through this. The section of heaven and hell that we've read starts with this question. Do babies go to hell if they die before they are baptized? Well, for many people in the Christian world, this is a really important question. Because a lot of the Christian faith seems to suggest that an unbaptized child is an unsaved child. Or put differently, if being with God in His kingdom, being with the Lord in His kingdom requires baptism, then every human being, no matter what age they are, where they're from in this world, if that person, or if any person hasn't been baptized, then they can't be with God. They can't be with the Lord. That is the way things are generally understood. So here, in this section of heaven and hell, this question, this challenge is addressed immediately. No, baptism does not assure that a person gets to heaven. It does not assure that a child who passes gets to heaven. All baptism does, we're told in numerous places, is to serve as a reminder for the parents, if it's a child being baptized, for the person themselves, if they're being baptized, that they need to be born again, as the Lord has said in His Word. Every individual must be reborn into the character of an angel, into the personality, into the love, into the life of an angel. In other words, there's a lot of things that we're born with that need to be shed and replaced by heavenly, angelic things in order for us to be with the Lord in His kingdom. Baptism does not save anybody, we're often told. It serves as a very important reminder of the process of being saved, of being reborn. So as said, this section of heaven and hell takes on this question and dismisses it fairly quickly, so that then it can move on to talking about what really happens for children who pass on. We think about the life journey. What is our life meant to be like? Ideally, what should our life be like in this world? Ideally, we grow up. We become fully rational adults, able to analyze our own lives, analyze the world that we live in, think about the teachings from the Lord as we understand them. And we then make rational choices about the kind of human being we want to be. We face opportunities and challenges. And then at some point, after we've had a chance to reflect on life, to live life, to hopefully be transformed step by the Lord into the angel that He wants each of us to be, then we move on from this life into the next. Children who pass away don't travel that path. They don't take that journey. But what they have entering the next life is something that as adults we don't tend to have. And that is, they never lose their innocence. A child has never lost their innocence. Does that mean that they've always acted perfectly if they've grown up and are being a normal child? Well, the answer is no. But we're told that the innocence of childhood is a lack of malice, a lack of intentionality to do anything wrong, a willingness still to be led by parents and ultimately led by the Lord. And so children, because they never lose that innocence, are in a very special circumstance when it comes to entering the next life. And so we're told here that we need to realize that a child who leaves this life wakes up in the next life, that an infant is still an infant, a young child is still a young child, somebody in early adolescence is still in early adolescence. The journey ends here and then continues on. And so we have children being raised in the next life, growing up in the next life, exploring in the next life. We're told that there are angel women, female angels as it's sometimes put, who take the raising of these children on as their life mission, as it were. That's what they love to do. They're not the earth mother or father, but they play this incredibly special role to nurture, to raise, to support, to comfort, and to do all those other things that every one of us needs, particularly when we're little, particularly when we're young. And in fact, the teachings say that the women who tend to take that work on in the next life were ones who had a especially deep love for children when they were in this life. So a woman in this world who really loves children may very well be somebody who helps with children in the next life. We're not often given explicit details of what people do, what their angelic occupations are, how they spend their time, how they show love and charity. This is one of those specific examples. The raising of children who have passed. And what's fascinating, we're told, is that in this world there is a normal progression of childhood development. Certain things are anticipated at certain ages. Now there are always exceptions to that, but for the most part we sort of anticipate that children will do certain things within certain time frames at certain ages. But what seems to happen in heaven is that everything accelerates. And that's because there is no physical body to restrict development. The children in heaven, like all people in the next life, have spiritual bodies that aren't confined to time and space. A spiritual body doesn't grow at a set rate the way a physical body does. A spiritual body doesn't mature at a certain time frame or within a certain time frame the way a material body does. It goes through the same phases, but it just happens when it's right for it to happen. And so we're given this picture of little children who perhaps, if you looked at them wouldn't seem like they were old enough to talk, yet they're talking. Little children who don't seem like they're old enough to walk, yet they're walking. That everything kind of speeds up because the barriers to development that exist in this material world with material bodies don't work there. Those limitations aren't there. And so there's nothing stopping that progression. There's nothing stopping that growing up. And one of the things I like about this slide here of two little kids, one with a magnifying glass, looking at flowers or bugs or whatever it is exactly they're looking at, is that the next thing that we find in this section of heaven and hell is a description of what life looks like through the eyes of a child in the next life. What does their world look like? And here's a statement that I think that resonates with anybody who has seen a child in this world. I have been shown what children's concepts are like when they are looking at various objects. It is as though everything were alive. We see that with children here, don't we? It's amazing how, for a child, an inanimate object can be very real and very alive. The way children play is an example of that. That something, a toy, is an inanimate object, except in the hands of a child with their imagination. In which case, it has a life that goes beyond that physical object. Imagine a child in the next life, and everything was alive like that. Everything. There are no inanimate objects. Everything is alive. Everything is talking to them. Everything is full of wonder. Every situation is an opportunity to explore and to learn and to grow. What must that be like? If we could go back into our preschool selves, what would life look like for us? If we could get into the mind of a child in heaven, what would life look like? A truly phenomenal experience. So much of this part of heaven and hell is devoted to thinking about the reality of heavenly life for children. With the reading that we started off with from Heaven and Hell, saying that we need to know, we need to be reassured that every child from every background who passes from this life to the next is received by the Lord, is raised by the Lord, often through these angel women that we spoke about who help. And that every child then gains knowledge and wisdom and develops and becomes an angel and is accepted as an angel into heaven. We could say that they are in heaven from the very moment they pass from this life to the next. But that they're not really a full angel until they've grown to have adult rationality, to make adult type choices, to accept the Lord and to accept heavenly life in an adult type of mature way. But that every child does that, from wherever they've come from whatever type of family or social background, whether they've come from the most devout family imaginable to very, very difficult, irreverent, non-God-fearing situations. Everyone is loved by the Lord, accepted by the Lord, raised in heaven by the Lord and becomes an angel. It's no wonder that at one point we're told that people who have left this world as children make up a third part of heaven. It's no wonder, because there's a 100% acceptance rate. From the beginning of time. Does any of this make losing a child easy? The answer is absolutely not. I was looking online the other day. It's a discussion board. And it opened up the door for people who have lost a child to share with other people who have lost a child. And there were hundreds of people who responded to the 3 questions that we have up here now. Those 3 questions were, and this is taken directly from that site. The first question was, what you wish you had known as a parent. What you wish you had done differently. And then what are you thankful you made sure to do as a parent? As I said, there are literally hundreds of people who have responded. Here's just 3 of those responses to those 3 questions. I wish I had known that you can't die from heartbreak, but you may want to. Life goes on, and so does love. I wish I had been more patient and realized that they needed to find things out for themselves instead of always trying to protect them. I am thankful that I always said I love you before they left to go anywhere, before they went to sleep and before we hung up the phone. Those were my last words to my daughter before her accident. From the next person. I wish I had known that if there is a God, He chooses favourites. I wish I would have listened to the doctors and not wasted so much of what little time we had left praying for a miracle. I am thankful that just before he died, I gave him a piggyback ride against doctor's orders. I was crying, and at the end he was laughing for the first time in days. I wish I had known just how dark the road is when you lose a child. I wish I had spent more time enjoying those little moments, watching his eyes light up as he discovered new things. I am thankful that our last words were always, I love you, whether going to sleep or as I was leaving the house for work. Picture up here of an angel baby. All of these teachings that the Lord gives us about life in this world, about life in heaven, aren't designed to make the difficult easy. They're not designed to take away those powerful human emotions and the heartbreaks that come from losing somebody that you care about, especially a child before their life has really had an opportunity to go through all of those things that we would wish that every life would have a chance to go through, to experience everything that we wish a person could experience. The point isn't to take away the pain and the heartache and all those other things that people experience, but to reassure people that no matter how difficult, the Lord's love is the most powerful force in all of the universe, the most powerful force in all of creation. That child is going to experience the Lord's love in a way that is hard to imagine. And that they will, in fact they are guaranteed, they will become an angel in heaven. Now nobody can take away, the Lord himself can't take away the hole that's left when a person loses a child. As said, all he can do is reassure us when it comes to what happens next and reassure us about his love. So on the back of the handout is the suggested task for this week. As a task for this week, notice the children that you see in person or through the media. If one of those children were to die and you were a close friend or relative, what would you say to the parents? How might knowledge of the life of children in heaven, when appropriately conveyed, bring some measure of comfort? And then going on to learn more about children in heaven, please read Numbers 329 through 345. Next week we'll be thinking about Numbers 346 through 365, which talk about the vast variety of different types of people in this world who all end up in heaven. Amen.
On page 884.